Welcome, everyone, to another episode of How Do You Keep Well podcast. I'm so excited to be doing this solo episode, and it is a very special one. And my aim is really to use this episode to salute my sisters all over the world. And a special shout out to you, my lovely listeners from all over the world, from, of course, Nigeria, to the United Kingdom, to Canada, to the United States of America, to Spain, to Germany. I'm so excited to see that this podcast is having an impact to people from different regions of the world. And you wouldn't believe it. Even my youngest daughter was so excited when she saw the different countries where this podcast is being downloaded. Thank you so much for your support. Like you all know, with every adventure or an endeavor which is new, there's always fear, there's anxieties, there's worries. In particular, if you're like me, you want it all to be perfect. Well, thanks to my colleague and my first ever coach, Dr. Bumiaki Kugbe, she always reminds me that it is progress over perfection. Now, if you have not listened to her, go and check out a podcast, the True Elegance podcast. It's always so lovely to have people who support your dreams, your visions, and your goals. And yes, you can consider me your cheerleader as you aim and strive to attain some healthy habits over the next couple of months or years, however long it takes you. Now, this month, October, which we're coming towards the end of, is a very special one. There's lots of opportunities for us to again think about our well being. I know it's a special month for women, but yes, who does not have a woman in their life? For men, uncles, brothers, husbands, we are all celebrating the women in our life. And definitely here in the UK, there are three important events that we're celebrating. So there's the Black History Month where we are saluting our sisters, the Menopause Awareness Month, and the Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Okay, let's take a look at each of these. For the Black History Month, we are saluting our sisters, particularly celebrating the contributions of Black people to the growth of the United Kingdom. I find it's really intriguing reading and learning about the unsung heroes that have made the world a better place for others, especially women who have worked incredibly hard in areas of science, literature, art, technology. But guess what? You are one of those. You, my lovely listener, who is determined to live a better life, to be a role model for the next generation, to show up and shine, to be a blessing to other people, and to live a life of impact. I salute you. Now let's look at the next topic, which is the Menopause Awareness Month. This year, the focus is on cardiovascular health. Cardiovascular health really means cardio, which is anything to do with the heart, and vascular means anything to do with blood vessels. Now, you might not know this, the World Menopause Day is held every year on the 18th of October. And the main aim of this day or this month is to raise awareness of menopause and, may I say, perimenopause, and the support options available for improving the health and well-being of women. Like I said, cardiovascular health is about heart and blood vessels. So where there are diseases in these areas, it can affect the heart, it can affect the brain, it can affect the kidneys. It can affect the eyes. And sometimes some people even develop blood clots in their blood vessels, and these blood clots can be carried anywhere in the body. So, this month is an opportunity for you to think about your heart and your blood vessels, especially if you're a woman in the perimenopause or menopause. And we will come back to that in a moment. And the last and the final health awareness activity this month is the Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And the focus is on secondary breast cancer. Now, secondary breast cancer is basically when breast cancer has spread around the body, which is very sad. And as a doctor, when I see this happen, it breaks my heart. Honestly, it's so hard. Currently, secondary breast cancer can be treated, thankfully, but it can't be cured. And there's a lot of research going on into the different types of medications and also genetic therapy to help people live to the fullest for as long as possible. So, again, I just want to salute all the scientists all over the world working on this. God bless you all. Now, there are some facts for you. Did you know the leading cause for death in women, especially between the ages of 35 to 49, is actually breast cancer here in the UK? That is really sad. Now, what about women above the age of 50, especially between the ages of 50 to 64? Again, cancer tops the list. It's lung cancer, then breast cancer, and then the third is heart disease. Thankfully, things have improved compared to what it used to be in the past. For women, the death rate from heart disease and even things like stroke have actually reduced by half compared to 22 years ago. What we are having now is that the death rate from dementia and Alzheimer's disease has actually doubled. The huge improvements that have been made in prevention and treating and managing heart disease and their risk factors has actually helped to reduce the death rates compared to 22 years ago. There are still some modifiable risk factors for heart disease and stroke. And when I say modifiable, these are factors that we have control over. And chief of this is our body mass index, especially a high body mass index, which could indicate excess weight, and also diabetes. So we would have a look at this in a moment. But overall, this my own little corner, I can't help but shed some light on these important matters, particularly from the point of view of our lifestyle choices and health behaviors. I know we all get banged around with eating healthy and all of this, but sometimes just being aware of the impact these changes make can motivate us. It can actually be the strongest motivation for some people to begin to make changes, particularly if you have like risk factors that you can't do anything about. For instance, your age, your family history, your ethnicity. That's if you're from an Afro Caribbean background, sometimes your risk is high just because of that. So, from your own angle, look at what you can do to prevent these conditions. And guess what? I found it really fascinating to learn that recent reports estimate that successful lifestyle changes could prevent about 25 to 30% of cases of breast cancer. That is incredible. That is about 1 in 4 cases of breast cancer can be prevented by making a healthy lifestyle choice. Okay, now there is even more good news. Did you know that pre-diabetes, that is the when people have slightly high sugar levels, but not high enough for us to make a diagnosis of diabetes. We call that pre-diabetes. Did you know that pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes can be prevented with the right support? About 90% of cases in the United States and 50% of cases in the United Kingdom can be avoided by making lifestyle changes. Again, those are big numbers. At least 50% of cases can be prevented by making healthy lifestyle choices. Have a little think about that. Now, this one is from the World Health Organization. As many as 80% of all heart attacks and strokes are preventable. No, these are numbers that really we shouldn't be playing with at all. Imagine if we can all make efforts to change some of our health behaviors, the impact it can have on us, on our generation, and even people around us who are relying on us to shine. So, this day, my podcast is dedicated to all my sisters in the midlife. What is midlife? Define it your own way. I can certainly say Jaye, am in the midlife. Okay, let me give you some story. My first midlife crisis was deciding to do a mud run when I turned 40 a few years ago. It was fun. I'll tell you a secret. I did not tell my husband I was going to do it. I didn't want anyone to discourage me. So I secretly planned for it. But I can assure you, since then, I have not looked back. I continued to clock close to 700 minutes of brisk walking every month. This has made such a tremendous change for me physically, mentally, emotionally, and also spiritually. It has been a real game changer for me. You know what? One of the things I really dreaded was getting fat in the midriff, especially during my midlife. Yes, belly fat. But you know what? I know this may have a tiny advantage with certain types of dresses, especially some Nigerian attires where you have to tie like a special wrapper. We call it wrapper. We call it those attires are usually wrapped around your waist and they really sit nicely. But also, when you've got a lot of fat around your abdomen and it's quite bulgy, you, especially when you're wearing your lovely dress suits or official clothes to work, you just get really conscious. I particularly get conscious about my tummy. And you know what? This is still work in progress for me. So, what really happens is this: as women approach their final menstrual period, there are some intense changes happening in their body. Now, scientists allude to hormonal aging and chronological aging. These are events that happen simultaneously in women. Some women recognize it and react to it in a number of different ways. In fact, it is said that about 25% of women may have no symptoms. Another 25% of women would have severe symptoms, but at least 50% of women would have some symptoms of the transition from the transition to menopause. Obviously, chronological aging, that's just the normal natural aging, causes its own events. You get the natural wear and tear in various organs of the body and also weight gain. I say to people that the weight you were when you were 10 is certainly not the weight you would be when you're 50. The natural aging that occurs makes people gain weight. Now, what about the hormonal fluctuations? the hormonal changes. Apparently, this does not cause weight gain per se. The main effects with these hormonal fluctuations and the transition to low estrogen to no estrogen is the accumulation of fats in the abdominal area. Also, a woman begins to change in shape. This change in shape causes a lot of physical and psychological distress to women. For many women, their appearance is their core of their identity. And this change in appearance can cause a lot of worry and anxiety. I once had a client who told me she could not bear looking at herself in the mirror. She did not like what she saw anymore. This is such a painful experience for some women, and it definitely for some occurs right at the start of a change, maybe in their career or in their social settings, and it can hold some women back. So, dear friends, work colleagues, husbands, partners, please be mindful of that woman in midlife in your circle. They may be experiencing a lot of physical changes that is affecting their emotional and mental well-being. We now know that 1 in 4 people experience mental health changes at least once in their lifetime. So please be kind to people. Now, how does this all link to cardiovascular health, that's our heart health, and to breast cancer? Now, this is it. The increased accumulation of fats in the abdominal area and also the weight gain that happens in midlife predisposes women to 3 things. It increases the risk of heart disease, especially after the menopause. It increases the risk of cancer, and it increases the psychological distress. Now, the psychological distress, that's the loss of identity, can actually be turned around with intention and also what I call sound future proving, getting yourself ready mentally for it. Now, let me go a little bit into the heart disease. This is how it develops. The increased accumulation of fats in the body causes an increase in insulin resistance. Now, for a moment, think about insulin resistance. It may be a little bit similar to drug resistance. You know how we talk about using antibiotics a lot can stop it from working. That is what happens with insulin resistance. The cells in the muscles, the fat cells, and the liver don't respond well to insulin. And that means the insulin is not working to take up glucose from your blood. So the insulin that is produced or sometimes injected by people who've got diabetes does not work as effectively at moving the glucose away from the blood into the cells. Now, this causes the glucose levels in the bloodstream to remain high. Unfortunately, your pancreas, that is the big organ towards the back, just keeps pumping out more and more insulin. And this circle just keeps going round and round. This is what causes insulin resistance. And this insulin resistance causes a number of different conditions to start developing. The other way it happens is the blood pressure. The high blood pressure that is results from a stiffening of the blood vessels, especially the arteries. Now, this is the one that is very common in Black women. The third thing that happens is the cholesterol. The body is unable to break cholesterol down because of the lack of estrogen. And a number of studies have actually confirmed this. Now, a combination of these 3 factors, the insulin resistance, the high blood pressure and the increase in cholesterol increases the rate of heart disease. And this is why it is one of the top three leading causes of death in women, especially above the age of 50. So I say to people, please know your numbers. Certainly know your glucose level, your blood pressure, and your cholesterol. It's really important to know your numbers. Now I'm going to go to the second segment, which is about the risk of cancers. A number of research has linked obesity to at least 13 different types of cancer. 13, 1 3. That is big. In the UK, the second biggest cause for cancer is actually being overweight or obese. It causes more than 1 in 20 cancers. Now, breast cancer is the commonest cause of death in women. Can you imagine this? About 150 women a day are diagnosed with breast cancer. The causes for breast cancer is not fully understood, but age, genes, the type of breasts, and that means the density for some people of the breast, ethnicity, all risk factors. These are risk factors that we really can't do anything about. But look at these other risk factors. Your weight and the amount of alcohol consumed can actually feed into it. Like we said before, 25% of breast cancer cases, that is 1 in 4, can be preventable through lifestyle choices. Being physically active and avoiding alcohol can literally reduce your risk of developing breast cancer. Now, let's say this, being overweight doesn't definitely mean that you're going to develop cancer, please. But the risk is higher the more overweight you are and the longer you're overweight for. And what happens really is fat is not idle in the body. They send signals to the body cells and they cause a lot of inflammation. Your body begins to make extra hormones and growth factor and more cells. Now, these cells that have increases the chances of cancer cells, especially in areas like the breast and in the womb. So certainly there is always an advantage at making efforts, whatever that is, whatever is sustainable for you, in monitoring your weight, definitely avoiding putting on more weight to help reduce the risk of cancer. Now, this is what I generally tend to recommend. Make it your focus. Focus on continuing on something. You can't just keep thinking about it. You've got to do something. Even 20 minutes of something is better than nothing at all. Focus on keeping a healthy weight. Not only does it help with your energy levels, but it also reduces the risk of heart disease, the risk of stroke, the risk of having other issues like joint problems. Now, whilst we talk about focus, I want to focus on two big areas, on our food and our fitness. And this is where I give you my top 10 tips. And for food, I say to people, don't just think about having an eating plan. Sorry, don't just focus on having a diet. Focus on having an eating plan. Have a plan for the way you eat. Look at the quality. My first top tip is the quality. Avoid eating too many processed or ultra processed food. These food are naturally high in fat, sugar, salt, and some additives that can actually increase your craving for food. So you end up eating more food than you should. Honestly, there's been a lot of research around these aspects of eating. And the one I really find interesting is that the more processed food we eat, the higher the rise of carbohydrate and blood sugar levels are. So after eating, it's really hard to keep the glucose levels in the normal range. The rate at which your blood glucose rises after eating different carbohydrates is referred to as the glycemic index, also known as the GI. The GI is a way of measuring the effects of individual carbohydrate food on the blood glucose level. And it recognizes that all carbohydrates affect blood glucose in the same, not all carbohydrates affect blood glucose in the same way. The lower the GI, the slower the absorption. So remember, go low and slow. The GI of food is determined by how quickly it is digested, which is influenced by many things. Processed and cooked food tend to have a higher GI. So that's why we tend to recommend fruits and vegetables or fiber foods that are high in fiber. They lower the GI of foods generally. Now, here are the advantages of having lower GI food. They are digested more slowly, they stay in the system longer, they cause a slower, steady rise in blood glucose level. They make you feel full for longer, so you're not hungry too quickly. And that means it would help with trying to lose weight. Also, low GI food help to improve the body's sensitivity to insulin. So that means that it would improve the blood fat levels and good cholesterol. That way, you have more good cholesterol. And people who have a lower GI diet have a lower incidence of heart disease. We've talked about having more vegetables, having more fruits and more fruits and vegetable because they have a small effect on the blood glucose level due to the fiber in them. So, for example, let me give you some example. So let's look at rice. Rice is a very common type of food we eat in my house. Okay. Generally speaking, as long as it's eaten in moderation, you should be fine. But there are certain types of rice that have a high GI. So, for example, jasmine rice is known to have high GI. Now, you could maybe try alternatives like basmati rice or brown rice, or even when you eat pasta, try to eat the whole wheat pasta instead of the white variety. They do they help, especially when you eat it with some vegetables. The balance between the vegetables and the rice allows your body to receive glucose in a slower and steadier way. The second thing is the quantity of food you're eating. Look at your portion size, especially your carbs. Try to eat in moderation, like I said earlier on. A lot of the diet eating in some African countries is quite carbohydrate based. So why don't you focus on adding more veggies, more vegetables to your plates? So look at this, the larger the portion of the carbohydrate you have eaten, the more insulin your body needs to help you absorb it to use it as energy. So as explained above, when you have insulin resistance, the body is not able to recognize these large amounts of insulin. So that means that there is ineffective absorption of standard portions of carbohydrate food. So I tend to advise people is eat smaller amounts of carbohydrate food and try to spread your carbohydrate out every day. Try not to double up on your carbohydrate food in one meal. For example, try to avoid having bread and potatoes or having sandwiches and chips all in the same meal, or perhaps eating spaghetti and garlic bread. Those that, yeah, basically doubling up on the carbohydrates that you have for that particular meal. So I'm sure you can think of where you can make changes here. The next thing is look at the timing of your food. That is really important. Some people obviously are shift workers and they can't help this. But when you can, especially at nighttime, avoid eating s- heavily carbohydrate based or processed meal because one, it can affect your sleep and then increase the risk of your weight gain. So things like obesity and cardiovascular disease is also increased when you eat kind of heavily carbohydrate based meals at nighttime. There are some people who literally need nighttime snacks for survival, particularly people who have type 1 diabetes or people who can't store glucose very well. If you can, try to eat your dinner before 7 o'clock at night and limit your bedtime snack to healthy options. You have My next one is about fruits and vegetables. You probably would have heard this over and over. Eat 5 fruits and vegetables a day. Now, this is not the target, it is actually the minimum. Definitely with your main meal or through the day, aim for a colorful rainbow plate. Even if this means dedicating some specific days to start with and slowly building this up. Finally, look at what you're drinking. Excessive amounts of high sugary drinks, sweetened fruit juices, or alcohol causes a great overwhelm to the system. They lead to a spike in your blood sugar level and then a crash. And when that crash happens, you're feeling hungry, you're craving, and you're needing to drink or eat soon again. So that's why, as best as possible, stick to water, limit any sweetened food or beverages to maybe just special occasions. Now we're going to look at the fitness. This is where I often start. First of all, be grateful for the body you have. I know sometimes it's hard to see the good in your body, but you have to take a step away from that mindset and be grateful. Look at how your clothes fit. Forget about the weighing scale for a moment. Now, if you're really struggling to appreciate your body and the way it's changing, try to speak to someone about this. Honestly, there's nothing to be ashamed of. Fat shaming of oneself is making people sick and making people depressed. This is really a mindset that needs to be shaken off. Enjoy the phase of life you're in. There's so much in you to give. Don't let this hinder you. You can take that first step today of accepting you just the way you are whilst making progress. Remember what I said earlier? It is progress, not perfection. Secondly, get up on your feet more often. If you are in a meeting that will last for more than 1 hour, try to get up and move. Avoid sitting for more than 90 minutes at a time. Thirdly, move your body. Midlife is for movement. You can't really afford to take things for granted anymore or assume that you do a lot of standing at work or you do a lot of different activities, depending on the kind of job you do. But actually, in midlife, you can't afford to take that for granted anymore. You have to be intentional with moving your body, with setting aside time. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, like I say. It can definitely something as simple as brisk walking. Okay. You could start a new activity at this point in time, whether it's Pilates or swimming or dancing, and you may find that actually it gives you a new burst of life. I know it can be quite daunting starting new things, like I said before, but you know what? It's going to have a lot of benefits. Start simple. Aim for 30 minutes of a brisk activity every day for 5 days. Would you try that for me and let me know how you get on? The fourth thing is lifting weight. And when I said this, I know it's not the cultural norm for a lot of my listeners and a lot of my friends, but you would soon discover that it doesn't have to be anything like we see on Instagram or on social media. And I often say this, my Pilates teacher is usually happy for me to use like a can of baked beans or anything similar for my strengthening exercises. But really, the idea is to start from where you are and slowly build this up. There are a number of strengthening exercises, and I would definitely put some links to some strengthening exercises that you can aim to do twice a week, just one and two. Twice a week is all that is recommended. If you can do more, that's fantastic. Finally, connect with like minded people. Find an app, something that will keep you accountable. You could even set up a group of like minded people like yourself or your family members or your WhatsApp group. Yes, your old school association. And you can all set goals together and do a friendly competition. Now, since it's the Menopause Awareness Month, I've been getting a lot of interesting questions about setting up Menopause Cafe, what is also called a Menu Cafe. And if you're interested in this, why don't you be in touch? I can help set it up for you or your friends in your WhatsApp group. Give me a shout out if you need help. And this is completely free. Now, thank you for listening to this episode once again. I do hope you have gained some insights that will be useful for yourself or perhaps a friend, a family member, a colleague, a partner. We've covered some important topics. We've particularly looked at why women gain weight in the midlife. We've looked at how breast cancer and heart disease can develop as a result of a number of different changes happening to a woman's body, especially at midlife. And I've given you my top 10 tips to help you manage your weight in midlife. I would like to finish with this quote from Oprah Winfrey. So many women I have talked to see menopause as an ending, but I have discovered this is your moment to reinvent yourself after years of focusing on the needs of everyone else. It's your opportunity to get clear about what matters to you and then to pursue that with all of your energy, time, and talent. And of course, to do that, you need to be well. So keep on keeping well and have a brilliant rest of October. Thank you for listening. Bye.